Steve, talk now.
Ah, good. Yes, me talk now. You start music. Here, go. Clicking. Ah, can you hear that, folks?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I'm feeling it.
This is some of the background music from the game that I'll be talking about tonight, which is Vampire: The Masquerade Bloodlines. Now, Vampire is without doubt the best vampire-based game I have ever played, bar none. All others are mere pretenders and must take a back seat to this awesome game. And like any good vampire story, it is plagued with tragedy. I should be right up front, in fact, and say that I have very few jokes in this review. I love this game, and its treatment on the market was truly a tragic waste. Now, Troika Games officially began work on the game in November 2001, but the nearly 3-year-long production cycle was plagued by many problems. When Troika had not completed a playable Santa Monica hub, that's like the first area that you start with combat and magic usage and all that sort of stuff that met with Activision's satisfaction. Activision were the money people laying out all the cash so that Troika could do their work, you know. When they couldn't do that to meet Activision's satisfaction after more than 2 years of development time, the publisher took several steps to bring closure to the troubled project. First, Activision increased their budget to add Troika's second development team to the project in 2004, after they'd completed work on the Temple of Elemental Evil. And next, it sent the game's Activision producer and 2 testers to work on site at Troika's offices until the game was completed. And finally, it set a deadline of September 15th for Troika to produce a code release candidate. This proved to be a poor decision. Troika delivered the code release candidate on the required date, although it left the development team in low morale because it was by no means ready. Due to the game's size and complexity, the code release candidate took 3 weeks to test. But on October 4, 2004, Bloodlines went gold as version 1.0. Since contractual obligations with Valve would interdict Bloodlines to be released before Valve's debut of the Source engine in Half-Life 2, Activision did not publicly announce that the game had gone gold.
Yeah.
They didn't tell anyone. The game sold gold and they didn't tell anyone. Just absolutely ridiculous.
That is.
And instead gave Troika an additional 1 week to polish up the game. 1 week. After which Bloodlines version 1.1 underwent another 3 weeks of testing. The second version of Bloodlines shipped on November 16, 2004, the same day that Half-Life 2 was released.
That's destined for failure.
One of the top-selling games of all time, Half-Life 2. You know, just
I bought. So I don't want to break this mood.
No,
but it's like ding 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 ding. Yeah, I don't really want to break this.
The soundtrack for the game is awesome.
Yeah, it sounds cool actually.
Yeah.
What have you got to say, Tom?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, just move it along. No, that's right. What was I talking about? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I'm glad you broke the flow for a good reason.
Exactly.
At least. That's good.
Yeah. No, I bought Half-Life 2 on 6 CDs.
Wow.
I didn't buy it as one DVD. It actually came as 6 CDs. That's just how I had to buy it from the game store that I bought it from.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I wanted to say. The other thing I wanted to quickly add actually was that I feel your pain about the patching, game patching. That's. You know, I remember I had this game called Sin for, I think I bought it in about 1999 or something, and it immediately required a patch. Right? You couldn't really play the game without downloading this 20 meg patch. 20 megs doesn't seem like much, but on dial-up it was, and I had this, I was with this internet provider that was free, but the catch was that it only lasted 2 hours and it would automatically cut you off. And so I would try and download this 20 meg patch, and I never quite could make it. It would always get to like 18 megs, and then I'd be cut off. You know. And so I never actually got to play the game because I never found anyone that could, or I just never got the patch. I think I played it years later, but by then I just didn't care anymore because it was like, well, this looks like Quake 2, and I was already playing Half-Life 2 by that stage, but. Anyway, get back into it. I'm sorry.
Right. Okay, let's bring that music back up. Oh yes. I was trying to remember where I was. Okay. The same day that Half-Life 2 was released. Valve's first-person shooter, a hugely successful sequel, sold 4 million units by 2006. Earlier release plans were to postpone until spring 2005 so that Bloodlines would not compete against...
I think that's just like a...
That's like vampire banking.
Yeah,
it's a management thing, but the great thing about that game is you can paint 4 rooms within the vampire bank.
I'm pretty sure you could do that in Theme Hospital as well.
Bloodlines. That makes more sense.
Dear. Okay, yeah, they wanted to. Well, Troika basically wanted to postpone Bloodlines so that it wouldn't compete against a sequel to a blockbuster with a large advertising budget and ready-made loyal following during the already competitive Christmas season. See, there's a theme here. It's a Christmas theme. There's a Christmas thing going on. Yeah, there we go. Now, this would have served the game well, in my opinion, not only to forego competing with one of the best-selling games of all time, but those extra months could have been used to iron out the bugs which were to plague its release right up until support was prematurely cut off. Yeah, unfortunate. But Bloodlines sales underperformed in the first few weeks, despite favourable reviews. There were still many technical and playability bugs in the release version of Bloodlines. It's almost unplayable, frankly,
which
in 1.0.
Which is impressive, because it did get good reviews.
Despite masses of bugs. And they're quite big bugs, too. Like, it'll just crash arbitrarily, whenever it suddenly decides to, and, half the time, if you save your game, it will crash before saving the game.
Oh, no.
So, it was truly.
And if you try and play the game, it will crash.
That's right. No, it was terrible in 1.0, basically. But apparently none of these bugs were judged to be serious enough to further delay shipping of the game. Yay, Activision. Now, after Bloodlines was released to the public, Activision compiled a list of problems customers were reporting to its customer service department and on various vampire websites. It then authorized Troika to spend a week, they love the 1 week, creating...
That's all you need.
Yeah, that's it. 1 week to create a patch to fix all of these problems. But as if just getting 1 week to do this was not bad enough, Troika's inability to find revenue from any other project had already forced the developer to lay off all of its employees. So they had no one to do it and 1 week to do it in,
No.
But even though there were several employees who loved this game and the company so much that they continued to work without pay on the version 1.2 patch, which after 3 weeks was released in 2004. Now, everyone, take a quick break, get yourself a drink, have a deep breath. This is an intense one. Let's bring out the music.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, unable to find additional work, Troika disestablished itself in February 2005. As a result, direct support for the game ended. Community patches have been released. They are the saviors of this game, basically. The Bloodlines community is, to this day, very strong and very active, and they're still releasing all sorts of stuff.
That's what's great about PC.
They saved it. Troika couldn't save it. Activision wouldn't save it, but the fans did. That's what I love about the nerd community, man.
Well, Activision, they didn't have much money, so they were,
Yeah, that's right. Poor old Activision. They're broke.
They couldn't afford it.
They've never sold anything good. Yeah, that's right.
It's never.
Oh, man.
I even know Activision, man.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. The community patches have been released as add-ons to the game in order to fix the errors and bugs that were not corrected by Troika due to the scope of the game and the subsequent closing of the developer, as well as to restore unreleased additional content found in the game files. They hadn't even finished making the game. There was a bunch of quests and characters and sounds that
they just never even threw in.
That's right. They didn't have time to finish it,
Wow.
Fortunately, as I mentioned, the game has received gratuitous help from a loving and skilled public and numerous unofficial info, art, mods, patches, fan creations and ongoing discussions. To this day, the community is solid and new content is released. The official patch went to version 1.2. The unofficial patches are currently beta testing 7.9. But
Right.
they've been working on it quite a lot
Wow.
for many years.
That's
yeah.
impressive.
The game at this point contains more clans, like character types than the original game did.
Yeah.
More disciplines, your special abilities, more talents, more quests, more storylines. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's enough of the technical rant. Like I said, it's tragic. It's tragic because this game was so good and it was rushed by Activision to get it out for the Christmas sales, and they killed it. They basically killed it.
You know, you're just talking about how they were so often given a week to do things.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the Matrix Path of Neo.
Right.
There was a game, and the PC port of that was so terrible. They basically got one guy to do the PC port of the game from the consoles.
Wow.
And apparently, and it feels like one guy did it. And,
It's such a sparse game. It is really I mean, it's still got all the activity. I played it because I was a big fan of the movies.
Yeah.
And it's one of those games where, they obviously didn't take into account painting walls. Like, for example, they didn't take any account into, how dense they wanted to populate certain areas. It just looked like an empty room at certain stages. And that's not that shooting scene in the first one.
Oh, man.
It hurt. It hurt.
The Matrix games weren't really that good, were they? Most of them.
As I've said before, many of those from the movie games are just dreadful.
That's true.
Dreadful.
Although Agent Smith does turn into a giant robot at the end of Path of Neo, apparently.
Right.
I didn't get
like Darth Vader turning into a scorpion.
I was just so disappointed.
Apparently, the Wachowski brothers.
Is white. What's going on?
Oh man! So they forgot to colour some bits in the game, didn't they? And
Racist.
I know I'm racist. And but the Wachowski brothers actually turned up at the end of the Path of Neo, and they're like, oh, we figured, fighting Agent Smith wouldn't be really that cool, so we made him a giant robot. And it all gets very Japanese, and
Wow.
Neo fights a giant robot. It's very strange.
Awesome.
But
all right, on with it.
Masquerade.
I thought I'd made myself plenty of background music here. We're actually getting close to the end there. That's all right. We'll rely on the Phil man who's got the skillful fingers on the desk to whip it on again and carry on.
Skill Phil, I like to call him.
Skilled Phil.
Let's just hope, for our sake, this ominous tune stays on for long enough.
That's right.
We've
got another page and a half here.
You know what I'm waiting for? It reminds me of Massive Attack. I'm just waiting for You Are My Angel. Come from. Anyway.
All right, great. Okay, so now we've left all that technical stuff behind, so on with the game's strongest point, the story, which is actually really, really cool. You play the part of a mere mortal who was foolish enough to pick up a vampire at a nightclub and go home with them. That'll teach you
Sounds
for having
like
sex
Blade.
on a first date. It is a bit like that. Yeah. Now, about halfway through having congress with the undead, not exactly sure who that's going to turn on, and all the teenagers that get really turned on by vampires.
Girls, exactly. They're
undead.
Girls.
You're getting excited by corpses, walking corpses. You are necrophiliacs. Enjoy.
Nice.
What do you think? It's going to be nice when they kiss you? No, it's going to smell like the grave and feel like a fridge. So enjoy. All right, that's
He
fine.
might sparkle in the sun, but don't be fooled.
Not in my bloody
Don't be
vampire
fooled.
world.
He is dead.
All right. So about halfway through having congress with the undead, you are, of course, bitten and turned. Unbeknownst to you, however, the vampire you just met is being watched by the ruling vampire group in the city, the Camarilla. More on them later. And you and your new beau quickly find yourselves staked through the heart. I should point out, in this game, that merely incapacitates you. It doesn't kill you as a vampire. And you're dragged off to a disused theatre in Chinatown for a trial. Now, the leaders of all the local clans show up as witnesses, and the whole show is run by the prince of the town. Perhaps I should stop here for a little explanation. The game is based on the World of Darkness role-playing games, the old paper and dice style games.
Oh, nice.
Which is an interesting world. In brief, vampires, amongst other supernatural entities like werewolves, ghost mages, demons, etc., 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 have always existed, and at times they have even ruled Earth. But those times are long gone. Humanity grew too numerous, and we could walk about in daylight without sparkling. Something had to happen, and it did. I'm sorry, I can't go a sentence without ripping on those sparkly, bloody vampires walking in the sun. That's just so bad.
That's not how vampires work.
No, that's not vampires. That's not vampires.
You melt in the sun.
Yeah, that's right.
You turn to ash.
That's right. That's right.
That's meant to be.
Now, a worldwide rebellion of sorts left the vampires all but wiped out by humanity, which led them to decide that discretion might be the better part of valor, and thus was born the Camarilla, which is essentially a group of vampires who have agreed that hiding from humans is far better than being wiped out. Gosh, this review is going on for a while, isn't it? I'm not even on page 3 yet, folks. I hope you settled in. I hope you're comfy. Got yourself a nice hot chocolate or something. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Now, as is pointed out in the game, once upon a time, as a vampire, one merely had to avoid the mobs of peasants with pitchforks. Nowadays, they could wipe out an entire nest with a single missile. So, this is no time for heroics. So the vampires of the Camarilla do not kill when they feed. They do not allow themselves to be detected by humans. And they strictly control their numbers by giving the prince, the ruler of the city, the final word in when a vampire may turn a mortal into a vampire. This is how the guy that turned you into a vampire got into so much trouble.
I see.
Of course, not all vampires belong to the Camarilla, but we'll get onto that later. Now, vampires themselves...
There's a lot we're going to get onto
There
later.
is a lot of later. There's a lot.
No, that's great.
Yeah. The vampires themselves are grouped in clans. Each clan has different strengths and weaknesses, and the player can choose between a fair array, as well as boost their powers, metaphysical, mental, physical, and social. And seduction is a big part of the game. You have to level your seduction. Yeah.
Sure this game is in Japanese.
Well, anyway, back to the trial. The prince gives you the rundown on recent events. Your sire, the vampire who turned you, did not have permission to embrace you, as they call it. It's the embrace. So it's a little bit sparkly vampire in the sun, but not
okay.
too much.
No, embrace is manly.
Yeah.
It's a manly embrace.
A manly
That's
What
right,
blokes
that's
do.
Yeah.
and-
I'm embracing Phil right now. Because I'm scared.
That's right. It's a terrifying game with a terrifying soundtrack. Yes. Now, your sire, the guy who turned you, has to suffer the punishment for his actions. So the sheriff, the prince's muscle in the town, whips out an enormous sword and slices off your sire's head, killing him instantly in a shower of sparks. Hardcore.
Yeah.
Then the attention is turned to you, and the prince does not seem receptive to your plight. He starts explaining that without a sire, there is little chance that a new vampire would survive long enough to even learn the rules of the Masquerade, the name given to the survivalist rules of hiding, etc., let alone abide by them, and therefore he has decided to kill you. And then suddenly, it appears you have an ally.
Yeah.
Yes. Nines Rodriguez, the representative of the Anarchs. Don't call him a leader, he'll punch you. Who are the Anarchs? They are one of the groups of vampires who do not belong to the Camarilla. They believe more in equality and personal responsibility than a set of rules, and aren't fans of the pyramid-selling style of leadership so popular in the Camarilla. Nines speaks up on your behalf, and the prince reluctantly agrees not to kill you outright, but instead to send you on a mission, which will probably kill you, to deal with a local sect of the Sabbat. Who are the Sabbat? The Sabbat are the third group of vampires in this game, and like the Anarchs, they do not agree with the Camarilla's take on unlife. But unlike the Anarchs, they also believe that humans are food, fit only to feed their vampire masters. They want to bring back the old days when vampires ruled the world, and they are apparently not quite smart enough to work out that that's not going to happen. We've got flamethrowers and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
They would lose. But they are plenty psychotic enough to try. You see, now here's a good bit. All the Sabbat vampires are insane. When the Camarilla and the Anarchs have a sense of responsibility between a new vampire and the sire who created them, the Sabbat go for a more free-form approach. A mortal is bitten and then left for dead. They generally wake up underground, buried half alive, and must dig their way out. And by the time they reach the surface, they are driven quite round the twist. Half the time, they don't even know they're vampires. They're just insane and violent and very angry and confused. And it's up to you to stop a little plot that they have going down in Santa Monica. And that's where your quest and your new unlife starts. Ancient creatures, magics and legends abound as you run about Los Angeles trying to stay alive and on the right side of the powers that be, while all of them struggle over possession of one particular artifact which is rumoured to hold the key to absolute power in the world of the undead. A lot of freedom of choice is given in the game, though the main storyline is very linear. Your actions absolutely choose between several groups, quest lines and endings during the course of the story. Vampire is an excellent and enormous game. I have just described the first couple of minutes for you, if that gives you any idea of just how big it is. The story itself is very long, very convoluted, and very, very cool.
I was going to say, that's very impressive because, you know that new game by id Software, Rage? It has nothing to do with this. It has nothing to do with this game.
Right.
But Rage.
Yeah.
Your review is longer than the amount of time I played Rage.
There you go.
I just thought I'd mention that, and I paid $100 for that game.
Wow.
But anyway, but this is awesome. I haven't talked much because I've sort of been taken in by it.
It's been very entertaining.
Yeah.
It's a great game. Well, we're on the home stretch. We've got a couple of paragraphs left. So.
Please continue.
I'm thinking of the poor listeners at home saying, when is Steve going to shut up? I know he likes the game, but geez, get on with it. Let's have some more 8-bit music.
They're already downloading.
I hope so. They should be.
Bloodlines.
They should be.
I can
they
feel
should
it.
be. It's very cheap on Steam, so go get it. Anyway, now, now, as well as the story being very long, very convoluted, and very cool, as I just said, it is also the only game I have ever played which actually terrified me. There's a mission where you deal with a haunted house, and it still throws me to this day. And I've played it literally dozens of times. And when I say terrify, I mean terrify. Not in the oh-so-popular nothing in the dark, nothing in the dark, nothing in the dark, big noise and bright light style that, we're going to make you jump out of shock type horror games, but real horror, where I could not play that mission alone at night with headphones. I just couldn't. It was far too terrifying. The kind of horror where you refuse to look behind you because of what you might see. Yeah. Now, in conclusion, get this game now. Why are you waiting? Seriously, you can listen to this show and download it at the same time. It's available on Steam pretty cheap, so there's no excuse. Do you have it yet?
I don't.
Come on, get a move on.
Yeah.
I give Vampire.
I'm trying. It's
I'm
not.
taking
It's
up
not
all
on
the
the
bandwidth with my talking.
It's not on the iPhone yet. I'm trying. Oh, man.
Last bit. I'm just about finished here.
No, that's okay.
Half an hour later. All right. I give Vampire 9.999 reoccurring out of 10 succulent blood dolls dancing the night away, waiting for your fangs to pierce their creamy necks and drink deep of life's blood. Just make sure you get those unofficial patches. They're not hard to find, but it's absolutely unplayable without them. Thank you.
If a gentleman throws that many adjectives into a review, it has to be an absolutely incredible game. And
it is great.
I'm going to download it, or even pay for it.
Yeah.
Which would be
hatred, bitter hatred. We're going to destroy the Sacra. We're going to destroy the Sacra.
Oh, we can't shoot him, obviously. We lost. Well, there you go. I did really badly.